Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me at benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcast because People of Distinction is a nationally and internationally syndicated show because of listeners like you. Our shows are available across all major podcast distributors as well as YouTube. And if you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. We appreciate the support. Continue to like and follow and sit back and strap in because on the line with us today, we have the impressive Andrew Raymer. And we're going to be discussing his amazing book, Ever After, The Extended Lives and Work of 11 Famous Writers. That's available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the regular online book resellers. But if you want to gather everything that Andrew has in store, do yourself a favor and head directly to his personal site, andrewraymer.com. Just to make sure there's no, confusion on the spelling, traditional spelling of Andrew, Raymer, Ramer.com. There, you're going to gather more information on this book, more information on him. But get this, people, he has been putting in work because in addition to this book, he's got 14 other titles that he's written, 3 others that he's co-written. So this man has a lot in store. AndrewRaymer.com is where you got to go to pick it up. And before we go any further, I want to take this opportunity and point out the fact that he was brought to our network by one of the best publishing firms in the business. People you already know. I'm talking about Citi of Books. So if you're a writer out there listening in, you've gone through your process and now you need some assistance moving the book you just developed. Contact Citi of Books. They're one of the best in the business to do it, and I promise you, this is what they specialize in. So you're going to head on over to citiofbooks.com and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is going to help you do just that. And listen, people, it is an absolute pleasure. I'm going to let you all know, just so there's no confusion, I'm going to switch over from Andrew. I'm going to start to address him as Eli, because this is what he prefers. He goes by his middle name. So Eli is an absolute embodiment of a person of distinction. It is a delight to have him here with us. This book, Ever After, is something special, man. It is layered, it is nuanced, and it's going to cover, like the title suggests, the extended lives, right, of 11 famous writers, some of which you may know, others maybe you don't, right? And we're going to talk about Jane Austen, we're going to talk about Tolstoy, we're going to talk about Oscar Wilde, and so many others. This book is something magnificent, especially if you're like me and you see the name Oscar Wilde. I come from an acting and a filmmaking background. That's a name I'm familiar with. Jane Austen, of course. Tolstoy, absolutely. So many others. This book is going to keep you at the edge of your seat. It's going to keep you very entertained, and it's going to give you a lot to work with. And at the end of the day, listen, Eli is the expert, man. It's his book. He's written it. Let's get him here with us to discuss it. Eli, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing good, and if we were on a screen, you would see me grinning, smiling at your amazing introduction. So thank you. And I want to, as you did, thank Citi of Books for connecting us, and thank my publisher, Whip and Stock, who are up in Eugene, Oregon. And again, if we were on the screen, I would be holding up the book, and you would see the incredibly gorgeous cover, the art of which was made by my sister-in-law, Lisa Acapinti, who is an amazing artist, and you can check out her work. So thank you for the welcome, and I'm excited to be here.
Well, listen, we're excited to have you, and I can be one to attest, even though it's not on the screen right now. People, when you start to head on over to do some research, look at that fantastic artwork that is on the cover because it is something truly remarkable. But you know what else is on the cover? Is this incredible title that, Eli, I gotta ask, man, because there's something about it. It is intriguing to no end, but as I was doing some research in preparation, I'm looking at the subtitle, The Extended Lives and Work of 11 Famous Writers. Okay, that's very direct. It's going to give you what to expect. Ever After. That got me thinking, got me pondering. I want to hear it from you rather than assuming. Talk to us about that title, why you chose it for the representation of your book, and the story behind it.
The title evolved over time, actually, Benji. I wanted, in telling these stories, they're all love stories. In fact, in the beginning of the book, I say that I'm puzzled why writers can't tell the same story again and again, but musicians can write the same theme and painters can paint the same, vision or version of a painting. So I told the stories over and over again of people living longer, falling in love with someone else of the same gender or sex. And so originally I called it Happily Ever After. But then I went online one day and I looked at all of the other things that were called Happily Ever After. And I thought, no, that's not going to work. So I came up with a title called Happy Endings. And I thought, well, that expresses what I want to say, but it's not the same. And so when I sent the book to a very wonderful friend to read it, she said, if that's the title you're attached to, go with it. But I'm not so crazy about it. Do you know what it means? So I think this is all happening in email, and I emailed back, no, what does it mean? So she wrote back, well, when you go for a massage, at the end of the massage, depending on who the person is, or maybe you knew this already, that it was going to be an erotic massage, they can say to you, would you like a happy ending? So I thought, ooh, I used to be a massage therapist. I had a bodywork practice. I never heard that expression before. So I thought, yeah, that's probably not the title. So I went from Happily Ever After to Ever After, which I felt like expressed some of, as you mentioned, what's going on in the book, but it isn't a total giveaway. And then in the end of the book, often in the end of the book, there's an author bio. This book has two. And so the first bio I call fictional, and I retold the story of my life. And since everyone I wrote about, I made them live for much longer. In the story about my life, I wrote a book that is rather like this book, but I call that one Forever After. Mm-hmm. And then in that fictional story, I died in 1987 of AIDS. So I went the opposite way with my fictional story. So long answer to your question.
Well, long answer to the question, but you accomplished two answers in one, because I also wanted to talk about the two author bios that you incorporated, and I love that. Well, now let's transition into inspiration to a certain degree, because you've already started to go into it. But Eli, I don't think it was a mistake that you chose these 11 authors, right? These 11 particular writers. I want to know it from your perspective, though. What about these 11 made you feel particularly inspired to write about?
There is a backstory to the question you just asked me, which is where the book comes from. Mm-hmm. In 1985, I woke up from a dream that I was at a garage sale in somebody's garage going through stuff, and I came upon a big boxed set of Jane Austen's collected works. It was exactly the same style as the box set that my mother had when I was growing up, that I think she probably bought in the 40s, of Jane Austen's work, but it was twice the size, because in my dream, Jane Austen didn't die as a younger woman, but she lived on, fell in love with an American sea captain, and moved to Boston. So that was what set it going in my mind, this story. And then I was fascinated with other people, like Virginia Woolf writing about Shakespeare's sister Judith and other alternate stories. But basically, the list of these writers are probably my favorite Western writers. Austen, Thoreau, Emily Dickinson, Colette, Virginia Woolf, and Franz Kafka, amongst others. So I felt like I was dancing with writers who I love already, who have really shaped who I am and how I write as a writer.
People, again, the book is called Ever After, The Extended Lives and Work of 11 Famous Writers by Andrew Raymer. Head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or directly through his site, andrewraymer.com. Gather everything that he has in store. You know, Eli, as we close out here, I'm curious, what are you hoping your readers take from your book Ever After? I mean, is this just something that is meant to entertain? Is it something that's meant for them to be informed by? A culmination of the two? What are you wanting people to take from your book?
Good question. I want people to feel in their own lives creatively inventive. In a time where we're facing the possibility of climate change, I want people to feel that we could rewrite the story of where we are. The UN has estimated that by the year 2050, there will be 1 billion climate refugees. How many of us will be living in refugee camps with all kinds of different people who we don't know?
Wow.
And one of the things I want people to take away is that the writers that I wrote about were all European or American. They were all white. Most of them were Christian. Some were Jewish. But in my dance of stories, I have them partner with very different people. So I'll give two little giveaways. Henry David Thoreau ends up being partners with someone who is Native American. And Marcel Proust, who had a French father and a Jewish mother, ends up partners with someone who had a Jewish Algerian father and a French mother. Another one, one other writer who is very French and white and European from a Christian background ends up with someone who is Japanese. So I want that to make sense, to be part of the possibility of expansion, connection, and communication that we're going to need to do to get to the next part of human history if we're going to survive here, and if our kids and our grandkids are going to have a thriving, viable world.
Eli, that is a loaded statement, right? And a loaded concept that the optimist in me is like, we can do it. And I fully believe that we can. But boy, do we have some obstacles in our way in order to achieve that. And listen, Eli and I had a conversation prior to this discussion, and we were just talking about the current state of society. And boy, oh boy, are we in quite the situation at this time. And I think the biggest part of it all, listen, regardless of where you fall, people, I don't care politically where you are. I don't care where you are economically. I don't care where you come from, where your background was situated. I do think that above all else, what is crucial and is such an important component is to be able to have conversations, right? And civil conversations, to be able to communicate with one another. Because I don't know, man. I feel like at some point we just stopped conversing. And that is a dangerous place for us to be. People, again, I think we've gotten so divided right now. And that's a scary point. But again, the optimist in me, I believe it. Moving forward, I think we can get back to that point where regardless of politics, regardless of personal beliefs, man, we can come together. We can be civil enough to coexist and to have conversations and put a lot of the differences aside. Because even though it may be a cliche, I firmly believe it. There is much more that connects us than separates us. And we've been focusing way too damn much on those separating factors. So listen, utilize this book for much more than what is there on the pages. Have conversations with those around you. But in addition, like I mentioned, there are 14 other books, all of varying degrees. And I want to go into some of those right now. Rather than just the generic question of telling us about another one of your books, Eli, I'm curious, amongst your 15 titles, and technically 18 if we combine the ones that you've co-authored, as a writer, is there an overarching theme or message that you strive to utilize as almost like a signature or a fingerprint that is the connecting through line through all of your books?
Another good question, Benji. The through line would be alternatives and possibilities. How do I feel called as a writer by my muses? And since one of the books that I wrote is an international bestseller, the books I co-wrote called Ask Your Angels, I very much believe literally that there are muses to us. Angels, ancestors, planet, God, who in my reality is God herself. And so all of my books are about alternatives. So one of my books is called Torah Told Different. And I take traditional Jewish stories and I retell them. And I retell them in the complexity of my own spiritual life, which is part Hindu, part Buddhist. I'm very involved in the Mennonite church that meets in my synagogue. My family, my extended family, we are Hindu, Sikh, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Wiccan. And so I feel like the muses that speak to me are saying, excuse me, Mr. Raymer, but open the doorway to diversity, and that's as a gay man, and the possibility. So to spiral back to Ever After, Thoreau writes a story inspired by his Native American partner that shifts how American culture unfolds to include rather than exclude Native Americans. And the final story in this book, which is called Border Crossing, is a story about Franz Kafka. And maybe my favorite story that I've ever written. And it follows in the vein of my other Jewish books like Torah Told Different, Queering the Text, Texting with Angels. But Kafka writes a story that is tinkered with. He tinkers with it after having a letter exchange with Mahatma Gandhi, who most people don't know had a male lover who was a German Jew. But Gandhi's suggestion to Kafka about how to tinker with the story changes it in a way that shifts the history in the Middle East and the history in the subcontinent of India. And I love the story. I'm proud of it. And I feel like, again, to spiral back to what I've been talking about with you, it's a doorway to possibility that I hope that everyone who reads it will look at and start to manifest in their own lives, in their own creativity, in their own families.
I love so much of what you just said, man. And one of the things that I think stuck out to me the most is one of those final statements, right? You just talked about a doorway to possibilities. I love that and what it encapsulates, what it could be and what it could lead us to. People, I think if there is nothing else you take from this interview, take that. Not only how great his books are, just for the books in and of itself, but as you're reading, you're embarking upon this journey, culminating all of his work, as well as a lot of the messages that we touched up on, and something that I just mentioned a few moments ago about getting back to talking to one another. Allow his books to be just that for you, a doorway to possibilities. I think hope and optimism is in short supply right now. At least it is for a number of individuals that I have in my inner circle that I've been speaking with over the past number of years, but even right now with this latest presidential election. And I'm not going to make this political. People, listen, as I mentioned, I don't care where you fall politically. I may have my own particular beliefs about it. And if you want to have the conversation, let's have the conversation. But I think above everything else, regardless of who is sitting in that chair in the White House, as a community, there is a lot of work to be done. And as Eli was just talking about his own family and those that are around him and all of the different religious backgrounds that he sides with, and also the ones that are around him within his inner circle, the beautiful thing about that is you have this eclectic mix that are all finding ways to coexist. And I think that in and of itself is a doorway to possibilities, because people, I promise you, it can work. We are divided now, but it hasn't always been this way, at least to this extent. I mean, I guess an argument can be made depending on where you are in society, where you are in history. Maybe we were more divided. We'll tackle that in the next show. But as of right now, I'm remaining hopeful. I'm remaining positive, and I think this is a snapshot into what to expect and also what we can be. There's a lot happening here, man. AndrewRaymer.com is a gift of so many different levels. His books are layered. It starts with Ever After, but I promise you there's a lot more there. Head on over there, pick up your copies, start the discussion, and let's see where we can take it to. All right? Let's get back to respecting one another, and I think that is really going to be the precipice and the foundation then to build off of. Eli, listen, man, I wish I could sit here and talk to you for another hour, another 2 hours, because there is so much more that we can have valuable discussions with. But for this time, I'm going to leave it at that. Instruct our listening audience to head on over and purchase copies of your magnificent books. And I'm going to thank you for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Benji, my brilliant, marvelous, engaging, and inspiring cousin, thank you.